Blood and bones. Graal resonance. 2. The true communication network is through the unified field of consciousness, dark matter, which cannot be controlled but is the medium for instantaneous transmission of intent. The ultimate secret is not to align your will with universal intention, but to make the will of the whole become one with your intention. The main resonator of fundamental cosmic intention is bone marrow encased in the crystalline network of bone structure. The bone itself is a crystalline resonator, and the bone marrow is the equivalent of the planetary black goo substance. The gateway, the main resonator of intention, to the fundamental field is located in the abdominal brain, the place where the two aspects called the death impulse and the life impulse meet, but the actual access and alignment with the fundamental field at the same time occurs only when the three main brains are aligned and synchronized, that is, the cerebral, cardiac, and abdominal brains. The point of resonance, of echoing the alignment in and from the fundamental field, is the planetary center. This is why women are naturally more predisposed to this process, because the uterus and ovaries, their entire intimate and spiritual structure, are in fact a resonator of the fundamental, primordial field of creation. The way people spoke in ancient times was completely different. First of all, they didn't talk much. Talking was a waste of energy. They spoke through intention, through breath, through closeness, through presence. They felt, transmitted, and received without words, not through words. Consciousness spoke through them. They spoke through consciousness. Energy was very important. Speech, utterance, was done in the present tense, in verbs, but they were presences, not persons. If you met someone, you knew. That presence resonated in your being, in your deepest intimacy, in your bone structure. You saw. No words were needed. The message was silent but full of life, complete and without doubt. In families and small communities, the group communicated through silences that awakened images, resonances, waves. That lively current of communication held both people and nature itself together. They were vibrant awarenesses, rhythms, waves. Love was not just a word. It was everything. Someone's presence, even from afar, was unity. It is still so now. But you must remember, and you will remember. We all live in a sea of consciousness, although the correct term would be that we are the experience of something indefinable and indescribable, found in an existential space, and this sea of consciousness is traversed by vital currents of various types, which form and generate movement, which move entire masses of water. Under the action of these currents, the water becomes alive, vitalized, energized. Its spin changes and becomes oriented, emerging from the local entropy in which it was trapped. What we believe to be an existential plane is in fact a certain type of entropy that drains the energy of the particles captured in its field, and this entropy is sustained by the collective attention of the particles existing in that entropic field. The more you believe that entropic field is real, the more real it becomes. This does not mean that it is not real, but that it is as real as a character in a play. The problem arises when the actor begins to forget that he is playing a role, that his character is just a game of light particles arranged in a certain pattern, whose structure or form, ephemeral, is given by the orientation of local entropic space-time vectors as well as, mainly by his own, manipulated or not, directed intention. The oceanic currents present in the fundamental field, at the macro level, which displace and enliven local entropies, are the carriers of intention. The idea is that you ride the intention, the dragon, in the direction that the current of complete freedom takes you, rather than driving your intention in a direction dictated by a distorted perception of yourself. What is called apocalypse is the dissolution, ephemeralization, and redefinition of the local space-time, entropy in which consciousness or energy was trapped. The construction of an entropic space consists in creating conceptual mirrors that cause the natural currents that normally animate creation to become trapped between the walls of this mirror space and move in a circle, in a loop. The energy of this repetitive movement, which we call life, becomes the very energy that sustains these mirror walls of the entropic space. This looping movement, which drains the energy of the particles present, captured in its mirror field, is what creates, what gives rise to the phenomenon of death, decay, and time, the impression of the existence of a beginning and an end, inevitable, of course. The desire of parasitic entities to consume the consciousness light emitted by beings does not come from their lack of light, but from their lack of connection to the original potential, the primal void. That is the source, root, that feeds. It is not the light itself that is actually the food, but what it is connected to, its source, what is behind it, and what emanates it. When the wave of consciousness is trapped between the mirror walls of an entropic space, it becomes a particle, that is, a character in a scenario, without actually losing its wave quality. When it is not defined by an entropic space, the particle remembers its wave nature, the ocean, the mass of potential, which is perceived as death and emptiness by the consciousness objectified in the form of a particle. Breaking out of the loop does not consist in destroying the mirror, the illusion, the ephemeral, but in remembering that you are a wave, a current, a movement, that you belong to a wave, a current, a movement, and that you are none of these things, none of what you thought defined you. Truth is a pulse, a pulsation, an impulse. It is not unique, but rather traverses and encompasses the existential layers like a flow, like a coherence. What we call world is actually a point where this flow, this coherence, becomes something perceptible or palpable through consent, through agreement, through the agreement of millions and millions of entities, of millions and millions of existential units. The margin of perception is also determined by the same agreement, the same consent inherited and cultivated assiduously. This is the point of assembly of the world that we have agreed to perceive from the infinity of existential possibilities. To agree means to move your intention, to be made to generate and capture only on a certain frequency band, in a certain direction, in a certain way, with a certain intensity. It means to emit in turn what you have been given, what you have inherited, as fact. Maintaining humanity within this margin of perception and emission of a specific range actually means cultivating energy, that is, a truth with which we all agree. The antenna, the main gateway through which the signal enters the internal energy system, is the crown of the head in men and the lower abdomen in women, women being in a way more difficult to manipulate and interfere with because they are more open, through that gateway, to the natural planetary flow in the first instance. We perceive a certain world because we emit it and because we have been trained to do so, to keep it in existence, instead of moving with the truth. The source has no interest in making you believe that you are elevating, evolving, or ascending for the simple reason that it just is. What creates the illusion of elevation, evolution, and ascension are the shadows born of your own unconsciousness, of self, and which give you the feeling that you are someone and that you are doing something. And those are not entities, in the true sense, connected to the source, but are born, fed, and sustained from that percentage of energy, from that existential potential that you have not fully realized, these being fragments of consciousness that are not integrated. Only when attention is focused both on the point and in totality at the same time is the emission of residue zero.